Dirk Strasser, Conquest. Stick around. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Three River Books. So this, my friends, is an independent publisher, indie writer, or author, I should say. They contacted me on my Goodreads. If you're not on my Goodreads, go ahead and go check it out. Become a friend, add a friend. Still trying to figure out that whole process, but it works pretty good, and I get to give my opinions. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. I'll put all the links down below. He sent me this. This is about conquistadors. If you don't know what conquistadors are, they are Spanish soldiers. They were commissioned by the Pope or the Catholic Church and Spain, the monarchy there, the king or queen or whoever it was, and they would get on these ships and they would go to islands or indigenous peoples, and they would take whatever they wanted, basically. So they would go there with their boats, their cannons, they had muskets, but their rifles, their swords, their armor, and they would go out and get whatever the hell they wanted because of the good of Spain and because of the good of the church. Ideally, because these are indigenous people, they don't have a lot of protection. They do have some slings and arrows and very little armor. Of course, the Spanish being mostly made of metal armor, very well suited for long excursions into the bush. And when they found these tribes, they easily took them over. They would take slaves, they would take jewelry. They did atrocities, obviously, because they are an invading army. And the whole book is basically a historical fantasy. Now, I'm not a huge fan of historical fantasy, and when I first started reading this book, it kind of was very weird, because I know what conquistadors do. I've read history before, so I was very familiar with it. And then when he threw in the fantasy part stuff, I didn't know how to react. It was a good book. I'm not saying it's not. It's a very good book, and I got into it at the end, basically when I dropped my bias. All right, so if that helps you out in any way, I would definitely recommend the book. If you like exploration, if you like invading armies, if you like death, if you like sex, if you like adventure and loss. I mean, it's got everything in there. We got different tribes, different armies. They're all fighting for power. I mean, it's in there. It's in there. My little thing was I didn't understand the historical Spanish connection with the fantasy was a little bit tough for me to swallow. But then after I got over it, I loved the book. It was great. It was entertaining. So the whole book starts off with Cristobal de Varga. He is the commissioned officer of this army. You have about 600 conquistadors with their horses, their cannons, all the supplies they need, and they land on this island. Now, the only people that are indigenous that they know of is a small tribe of Incas. All right, the Incas, Aztecs. Okay, you're probably familiar with that. And they're easily taking over. All right, so he finds whoever the lead guy is. I think his name is Herse or Herke. And they have very weird religious practices where they don't bury their people. They put them in mummies. And you kind of learn the whole traditions. Now, along with them, they brought a Catholic priest, or they call him Padre. And he's kind of a pain in the ass, a religious zealot, and you'll see that throughout the book, he just keeps getting into the way. And immediately, he has two lieutenants that immediately start fighting back and forth. So he's the captain, Cristobal's the captain, you got these two lieutenants, and then you have the Padre, and you have all these other conquistadors, about 600 of them. All soldiers, all of great caliber, all horsemen, and they're very well armed, and they have all the supplies that they need. Now, once they take over this village, obviously they're there for the gold. I mean, the Padre's there for the religion, but they're basically there for the gold. And he says, listen, this is all we have. We don't have a lot. But if you want, please take a look at my sister. And again, he tries to pimp out his sister to try to manipulate Cristobal, right? So that's kind of where it all starts. And again, there's a love affair in there, and I'm not going to get too deep into that one. But basically, these tribesmen are slaves. Now, the two lieutenants, Hector and Rodrigo. Rodrigo is sort of like the bad lieutenant. He comes from a very well-known family. He's been in a conquistador army for a very long time, and Hector is a slave, or was a slave. He worked in the copper mines. He came from nothing. He became a conquistador. And Cristobal's thing is he likes him very much. He also has his cousin there, etc. And what they're doing is Cristobal's thing is always trying to make the right decision. His command is his baby, and he loves his command. He wants to be one of the great famous conquistadors that conquered a land, that came back with all this gold, and he doesn't want to screw it up, but he does, and he's fallible, and he makes mistakes. And Rodrigo is the first one, the lieutenant is the first one to try to circumvent his authority, whereas Hector is more loyal to him. So you'll see like this inner working type of struggle or power struggle throughout the book. The indigenous people do say that, listen, we don't have any more gold, but I know of this other land that's on the island. If you go with me, I will show you. So he sends one of the lieutenants out there to go take a look at it. And sure enough, this is where the fantasy starts happening. The fantasy part starts happening. There is a veil inside on the island, sort of like Lost. If you remember Lost, there was some weird veil of shimmering lights or whatever. The only difference is once you walk through it, you can't walk back out. So it's a trap. Cristobal also writes inside his journal, and he has quite a bit of journal entries inside the book, where he is talking about his command. He's talking about what he's trying to do. He wants to be very successful and very well known, right? So they go through, finally they decide to go through, and again, there's this whole big religious thing going back and forth between the Christians or the Catholics and the indigenous people, and I'm not going to get into all that. But they finally go through the veil, and then they find out they're stuck. Well, there's no way out, because once you go through the veil, you can't come out. You have to find another path. Well, as they're going through there, they're looking at the game. They're looking at, where can we find all this gold? And again, the indigenous people are trying their best to try to survive, because they are a conquered people. While they're in there, they do mention that the sky is very red. Okay, the sky is very red, whereas the sky was blue when they first landed. Well, they finally run into their first tribe on the other side of this veil, called the Nakoi or Naku. I don't really know how to say it. Nakaq. Not really sure how that works. And that is these guys right here. If you can look up at the top of that page. All right. So these guys, I would like to say, are like the dwarves of Middle-earth. Okay. They're very tough, very strong, and they have a very stubborn type of personality. They look at the conquistadors as the enemy. You're not supposed to be here. You shouldn't be here. You should go away. And if you don't go away, we're going to kill you. Well, conquistadors being conquistadors are proud warriors themselves. Okay, bring it. They start fighting. They run into one of the leaders is Tarragon. That's this guy right here. And ideally, these warriors, for whatever reason, they have a crown that they can wear, and it's inlaid with gold, and then there's fire that comes out of the top. All right, kind of hokey there, but for whatever reason, this is how they see in the dark. That's why they always fight in the dark. They are underground dwellers, again, sort of like dwarves. So they get into this big fight with the conquistadors, and the conquistadors really realize that they're getting their asses kicked. But they manage to capture this one guy, and he starts to speak Spanish to them, and they figure out what they want. And finally, Cristobal goes to the king, and he says, what do you want? Why are you attacking us? We're just trying to leave. And they come to an impasse. There's no way that he can let them leave because now they know where they live. So there's going to be this great final battle. They go to this village or this location through many trials, and this is where the big battle is going to take place. We're right before the end. The Dunades show up. They are the angel winged creatures, and they're all female, and they're all beautiful, right? And they use bows. The elves, okay, so they show up. They're winged creatures, and they wind up helping the conquistadors to defeat their enemy. They wind up capturing him and a bunch of other of the dwarves, if you will, and the angel-type creatures say, hey, listen, you know what? These guys have been our enemies for a very, very long time. I know you're new here, but if you help us destroy them and wipe out their clans, we will be very good to you. We will give you all the gold that you can carry, and you can leave this island. Great. Cristobal doesn't want to do it because he has about 65 prisoners, and he's not about murder. He is a soldier at heart, and he says no. Well, one of the lieutenants, Rodrigo, decides that no, he's going to overthrow him, so he does. He puts the captain in chains. There's this big story that happens there. I'm not going to go too much into that. And what he does is now Cristobal, the captain, that was the captain, escapes with the help of the original indigenous people, and they wind up being whisked away with the remaining 65 Nakas, and they zip. All right, so now there's this big struggle. There's this big escape, I should say. There's this big escape, and they're running for their lives because I guess the Dundes, the angels, are after them. And it's a really good scene. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's a really good scene. But again, one of the lieutenants overthrows him, and he winds up getting carried to their palace in the sky, I guess you would say. So they went to their palace, and they wind up, all the angel-type creatures are female, and they wind up basically having sex with all the Spaniards because they want to have babies. So they wind up having babies. And I'm not going to get into why they do that, but again, they're all about beauty and all about the struggle and all of it. To make a long story short, there's this back and forth final battle scene, and they constantly are running away, and they're trying to get to this one location, and Cristobal finally wants to save his men because he knows that now they're only down to 200, and between all the battles, he still wants to save all his men. He still wants to have them go home with gold, and he makes this deal with them. He says, listen, if you will get my guys out of here, you can have me as a sacrifice. I will stay here. You can kill me. You can do whatever you want, but just let my guys go. They're still under my command. They were led incorrectly by this lieutenant, and they agree. And then I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end because it's just so good. So, what do I think about this book? This book was great. I liked it. I'm not a big fan of fantasy fiction, so please don't send me any more of those books. But the way it was written was good. The story kept me going. The chapters are super small. I had a question on the formatting, which was weird. Typically, all the chapters would be on this page, the heavier page, but the formatting is kind of all over the place on the book. There is about, there's about 337 pages, so it's really not a big read. The artwork is fantastic. I'll give you the ISBN, and I'll put all that stuff below. But again, this is a self-published book, and I think he does a good job. I'm going to be honest with you. I had no problem following the story. The story was very simplified. War, sex, conquering other lands, fantasy. It's a pretty damn good book. So if you're interested in this, I'll put the links down below. Hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. If you want to watch videos like this before anybody else, please go to Patreon. Become a Patreon member. It only costs you $1 a month. And then you get to watch videos like this before anybody else. So I really appreciate that. I'll see if I can get a link for this. I don't know if it's on Amazon. I'll go check. If not, I'll talk to the author and see where, or send you to his website. All right, guys. So go check it out. Dirk Strasser, Conquest. All right, pretty decent book. Thank you very much, guys, and as always, keep reading.